the 80s was a little bit different. By then we had already moved to Jackson, so we were no longer in Freehold. And we had a little more space. The trucks were no longer in a separate location, which they were when we first started the first few years, as we used to park over at Freehold Raceway. And now they were in the field right next to the house, so you can pretty much walk outside and go get right in the truck and go to work. So that was a little bit different. When I first started, it was probably still the 70s. First time I went out there, I was like 8 years old or something. It was summertime. I was on Alexander Avenue in Freehold. I know Mom dropped us off like after lunch, and she said, okay, you can stay with the guys. And I was like, ooh, I get to hang out with the big boys, right? So I get to grab a rake and, you know, just get dirty and sweat and pick up sticks and, you know, just basic groundwork stuff. But, you know, then got to hang out with the big boys. And then, you know, I got a whopping $5 in cash at the end of the day, and I was feeling rich, you know, so that was cool. And then, of course, you know, as you go along, it's, you know, you're 10 years old, 12 years old, it gets a little bit different, and you're learning new skills, and you're allowed to do more and work with the bigger machines and the trucks. And then as time goes on, then you get to your teenage phase. And so I'm sure at that point, some of it becomes drudgery. It's, you know, Saturday morning, you might have been out with your friends, and dad comes banging on the door, let's go, time to leave, you know. So at that point, it can feel a little bit more forced. And then, you know, you're still trying to figure out, is this what I want to do forever? And, you know, when you're that age, I mean, heck, you know, going off to college or the military, 4 years seems like a life sentence. So to think about what you're going to do for the next 30, 40, 50, you just can't necessarily grasp all that, I don't think, at that age.
So I was Laura Chisholm's youngest brother, Steve's brother-in-law, and youngest in the family. And I started working for Aspen probably in 1978, thereabouts. A little bit here and there because I was about 15 years old. A little bit more in 1979 when I was 16. And then started working more for them. 79, 80, and then 81 when I turned 17. I started working for them more because I had a driver's license. As I got a little older and as a business grew, I was working more steadily, especially in the summertime because I was still in high school at that time. By 1983, I went to college, and I would work for them pretty much full time in the summertime. I probably worked for them the most between 87 and 89, right around when I graduated college, maybe 86 too. And was, you know, kind of figuring out where I was going to land and what I was going to do. But I was working for them quite a bit then. And I was a ground guy, you know, just working behind the chipper, dragging brush, cleaning up, a lot of that, loading wood. I drove what needed to be driven at that time. You know, I would drive the bucket truck sometimes. I would drive the dump truck, pickup truck with stump grinder, whatever needed to be done.
We met Steve Sr. working in Freehold Township. We got kind of friendly. And he had approached me to see if I was interested in making a couple of bucks on the side with his small tree business, which at the time was one truck and one chipper, a couple of chainsaws, and a lot of part-time help. So he asked me if I was interested. I was. I injured myself on the job. And I thought I missed an opportunity. He's going to hire somebody else. Came back from my injury and talked to Steve. Asked him if he still had an opening. He said, well, the guy didn't work out. So yeah, come on out.
I've been working, this is my 35th year at Aspen full-time. Worked a couple years part-time prior to that. And that's when I met the Chisholms. Met them. They did a job for my parents. The sewer line had collapsed and we needed a tree out on an emergency. And I met Big Steve and Steven. And I don't know who else was out there, possibly Kevin. But I met them. It was kind of cool. Began hanging out with Steven. Became friends. And it's all been history since that.
1983, part-time. Met Steve through a mutual friend. You may have heard the story already. I believe it was 83. We worked together for 3 years, part-time, and then we went full-time with Aspen in 86. I think that's the right date. And the reason I think I remember that was we bought a brand new truck. It was an 86. So I'm pretty sure it was 86 we went full time. On, which you probably already know, on April 1st, April Fool's Day. Here I am. 40-some years later, I guess, right?
We had a much smaller team. It was mostly family and friends at the time. So we had, well, obviously a couple of my uncles at different times, part-time. We had a couple of guys that my dad worked with. We had Kevin, who, came on April Fool's Day, I think 1980. So that was always an appropriate date for him. And then, he was kind of like family for the next 37 years he worked here. So we were very close. And then Dave and I have been friends since like the 7th grade. So, again, we were friends and family. My father, my mother, my brother. And then we had a couple of other cousins and other people that were kind of transient, like part-time here, part-time there. Our neighbor at the time was my brother's godfather. So, I mean, it was kind of, like I said, it was very, very small, but tight-knit group.
Joe and Kevin, Laura would be out there. Weekends, we always worked like Saturdays. So then you got Bob and, some of the other guys, Mark's friends would come in and work with us. So there was a lot of guys from town that were friends with, Mark or Steven. And they needed a couple bucks. Big Steve was always there to help them and get them to work a little bit. Later on, Kevin's brother-in-law worked with us, and they brought people in, here and there. So all these guys, we worked. And then, I get a little older. Certain people left, went on to different things, started their own businesses. And that's where we're at.
Well, the boys, obviously, Mark and Steven. I mean, Mark started, I was working then with they were both still in school. They were both teenagers. Remember the first time Mark come out to work with us, he's chomping at the bit to climb a tree. And when you're doing something with an apple tree or something, I said, all right, go ahead, you can do that one. So he runs up there, trims it or cuts it out or whatever we're doing. And he was just all beside himself because I let him climb the tree. And then we were on another one, and he's like, yeah, all right, you want to try? Go ahead. And he climbed up a little bit bigger tree. And that's when I seen then and knew that there was something really special here. I don't think I climbed a tree after that. If I was with Mark, he was climbing trees. And well, you've met Mark, but yeah. But I knew him before he was famous.
Yeah, send the kid up.
Yeah, send the kid up. I'm old, send the kid up. We worked, probably 10 years with no problems. Everybody got along. Everybody was, friends, good or friendly coworkers or whatever.
Of course, I was part of the family, so when they needed an extra pair of hands, hey, what's Bobby doing this weekend? Can we get him out on the crew on Saturday? We could use, some extra hands.
Other mottos Steve and Laura had, my casa, your casa. And Steve always said that he liked to work with people that he felt comfortable going out to dinner with. So it was always that family feel.
You could always depend on everyone. So even if it wasn't a work problem, if you had a problem at home, you had a problem with a vehicle or something like that, you could always count on one of these guys, pick you up, give you a ride. You needed to throw someone a couple of bucks to help them out. That was something that was always done. You could always ask Big Steve and Laura. They would always take care of you too. So, like I said, it's like a family. So, family takes care of each other.
So again, like the times were different, 70s, 80s. Some people, especially during, there was a pretty good number of years where the Depression kind of recession type thing. I mean, people were lined up for gas like every other day based on the license plate. And, you had a few other things you had to deal with. People were always looking for side work and things like that. And hey, I'll work on the weekends, I'll work at night. And when he started the business for a little while, it wasn't really up and running like 40 hours a week type thing. Like we look at it today where it's 100% you go, go, go. So if they had a day off or the weather was, slack or somebody else had another job and they couldn't make it, they would postpone and put it until either the weather worked or they could squeeze it in, or they would do, like I said, nighttime, Saturdays. And then he worked for Freehold Township for a few years. And while he was doing that, he was doing this part-time and then having other guys kind of fill in during the day while he was doing that. And then he would fill in and do estimates at night or Saturdays and then do some of those evening jobs or the bigger jobs. And, If you only had a 2 or 3 man crew, it wasn't big enough, you would grab 2 more, and then they would go out there and finish it off and have 4 or 5 guys blow it out at the end of the night and just get it done.
We were as safe as we thought we could be, and and still get things. Find out years down the road that we could have been a little safer, but we were like, we made it. But I think that's why when I say we, Aspen took on a major role of safety because of the Wild West days, and not wanting to see any of these young guys get hurt and not go home. That's always a fear, especially with the power lines. Working around power lines. That's I always told my guys when I was working that we'll do everything we can possibly do that everybody goes home. Nobody takes no chances, which was learned the hard way, from Wild West days. That you can do this the right way and still get done what you need to.
The one thing Aspen always said, and you could see it on, Stephen preaches it now to the crews, leave the property looking better than when you got there. So if there were leaves or twigs or stuff on the ground already, rake it up, clean it up, because that's the first thing that people notice. Leave the yard looking better than when you got there. That's the Aspen way, and do it safely.
So there was a joke that, well, actually there was a motto. We like to leave the property as if we were never here. I says, okay. So they finished the job. We went to work after work to do a couple of jobs. And they finished doing the trimming, doing all the chipping, and they were looking around for me and they couldn't find me. And so I was doing what the motto said, clean up as if we weren't here. Well, I was raking the heck out of the backyard. And they kind of, okay.
One thing that is totally different than when I started is the amount of equipment that makes the job a lot easier. Back in the day, you didn't have the grapple trucks and the skid steers and the minis and portable stump grinders and stuff. Everything was manual labor. The equipment's 1,000 times better.
I don't know that we did a whole lot of different stuff. Like I said, a lot of the big changes. I think the 80s was a different time, because it was just about get the work done, pay the bills, keep the lights on, but, work hard, play hard. It was all about family and friends and just, we didn't think about growth and where are we going and what's going to happen. It was just, this is the job. It's keep the customers happy. It's finish the job. Nobody get hurt. Nobody break anything. Let's, just go out there, make your money, make your day's wage and come home. Maybe at that time, we'd hit the gym, which was in the basement at the time, and we'd go downstairs. We called it the dungeon. All the guys would chip in, and then like at Christmas or something, we'd all buy them some new weight machine, and then we'd all use it first thing in the morning or last thing in the afternoon. And like I said, we did almost everything together, a lot of us. It rotated on who might have been there, but for it was like a 10-year period that, we'd breakfast together, work together, and dinner, barbecue, go to parties together, go to the bar together, whatever it was we were doing. It was a pretty tight-knit group. So,
back in the day, originally all the Aspen trucks were orange, and Stephen and I were known as the Pumpkin Brothers because even when they switched over to the blue colors and the white trucks, the white and blue, for quite a while, Stephen and I were always wearing our orange T-shirts. We were kind of, attached to them, and we were always together, and we were just known as the Pumpkin Brothers. So, so I remember the old orange dump truck, the original bucket truck, and the pickup truck, and the first stump grinder that they got. I did a number on that stump grinder, yes. So I can't remember the name of the road right now, but it is now known as Harlow Circle in Freehold. And I had barely gotten my driver's license, and I was driving the pickup truck and pulling the stump grinder behind it. And this is before the days of cell phones and all of that. So, you either had to know exactly where you were going, or you had, keep your trucks in sight. And I was starting to lose the trucks in front of me, and I was bringing up the rear, and I went around this little circle, and too fast, and the stump grinder kicked the curb and flipped over, and I ended up dragging it, I don't even know, 30, 40 feet, something like that. This is a brand new piece of equipment. And Don Gomes and Steve had invested in it then. Don wanted to kill me. Like they realized I dropped behind. They came back to get me and realized what happened. And Don was like, he was ready to kill me. I mean, you can imagine I felt absolutely horrible about that. But they kept me around, probably because I was family, and Laura was like, we're keeping him around. But Don laughs about it now. He will laugh. It took him a little while, but he got past it, and we all laugh about it to this day. I mean, there's been mishaps and shenanigans probably from a lot of guys over the years, and I contributed to a couple of those, that being probably my biggest one there.
Probably the first Federation meeting I went to down at Cape May. They had been going to a few of them. They finally said, hey, you want to come? Yeah, all right. So I went, and back then there was a lot of adult beverages involved in everything. And him and another guy, Lou Corelli, had started, they were drinking, of course, and they had started this club where they had to go down Cape May, and they had to go out in the ocean and drink a beer in November, February. It was cold, whenever it was cold. So, okay, so they said, well, you want to go in the club? Okay, why not? So we all go down, we get beer, we got all these beers, we go down to the beach. We're down on the beach, and we go in the water. I go in the water, I drink my thing, blah, 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 do all that. We come out, and we're laughing and joking and cracking up, and we're walking along, and there's a cop coming towards, or maybe two, coming towards us on the beach. And my wife, Kathy's standing next to Steve, walking next to him. She goes, Steve, like that. And he's carrying all these empty beer bottles. A kid, Steve, and he drops them all. Cops. And he's like, great. Now, didn't break any, and the cops are like, so what are you all up to?
Well, they used to go on conferences, especially since they were in the business. And one thing they brought back was this little club they started, a jetty club, yeah. And so at one of the yearly parties, they would get a 55-gallon drum. Well, you probably heard the whole story. Filled it up with ice water because their conferences were usually in November. And so instead of going out into the ocean, you'd go into the 55-gallon drum.
And then you had to stand up to your belly button or something else, and in this nice ice cold water, and they would force feed you little shots of beer until you drank the whole one, because you couldn't just chug a beer fast. You had to suffer a little bit longer. So while they poured you a new shot of beer, you would sit in there. So those were all, again, good fun. It was part of that, work hard, play hard. So this was a weekend and you weren't working, we would do that and just do silly things.
Tons of stories from the 80s. At the house, I don't know if you've been over their house, but out in the back and stuff, big parties out there, and lots of good times. A couple of anniversary parties I spent there. And one of the one that sticks out with me in the 80s is we were up in Freehold working, taking a apple tree down, and three of us, me, Steve, Laura, and myself, were taking an apple tree down. And at the time, I still have the hole. But I didn't wear my earring in it. I took it out years ago. But we're working, and it caught the hole, one of the branches, and ripped my earlobe. So my earlobe turned inside out, so it was hanging down. And Laura's seen it, and she got all like, "Whoa, what the?" Like what? It didn't hurt, didn't feel. All I felt was like a slap. Like what? What's the matter? Your ear. So I look in the mirror like, "Oh, that's not good." So she rushes me to the emergency room, and they tuck it back in and put a stitch in it, put it back together. But I'm like, no, we got to finish the tree first, then we'll go to, no, we got to go now.
Kevin was another one that took a lot of abuse like that. He was definitely afraid of snakes. There were snakes in the lunchbox, snakes thrown at him while he was sleeping in the truck at lunchtime. So yeah, the guys, you had to know that at one point something was going to happen. and you were going to get, a dead bird or something, in the lunchbox. I haven't had a word for those something games. I forget what it is. But if you were going to dish it out, you had to know it was coming back to get you. And that didn't matter if it was Steve, Laura, Mark, Steven, May, Kevin. It didn't matter. You were involved. At some point, you were going to get it.
I can just remember, sitting in somebody's backyard again on one of those hot days, and they were like, "Hey, if you want to use our pool," and we're like, "That's a beautiful pool." And are you sure? We were all dirty, and like I said, we'd end up throwing each other in several days at lunchtime. Back in the day, I know some of the ladies might have liked it now, but like they'd be like the guys would be in there in their underwear swimming around in people's pools again with their permission. It was so there was those kind of days. We had this one lady. She was actually from Japan, and the first time I ever had sushi, she made us sit down. She was like, "Oh, you guys can't sit out there on the lawn. You got to come up and use my patio." And she's like, "I made you all lunch." We all packed our lunches in our lunch box and little brown paper bags or whatever. Anybody had their coolers, and she made tuna and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches cut into triangles and homemade sushi. And she made us all try it. The first time I'd ever had sushi, and I was like, "Wow, this is really pretty good." So those kind of things stood out. So it's always the interactions with the people, the customers. There was tough jobs, and I'm sure I drive by certain places from time to time now, and we can still drive by. I don't know if my one uncle might have told you about Harlow Circle. He was driving the truck and he clipped the curb on this little circle, and it flipped the stump grinder over, and yeah, he was worried he was going to get killed that day. And I don't know, like there's just so many little stories, but they've taken on legendary status at this point.
I don't remember if it was 87, 88, or 89. It was really, really hot. And there was a stretch of like, I want to say a week and a half, 2 weeks, where every single day it was over 100 degrees. And we were out doing our thing for Aspen, whatever needed to be done all day long. And then we were going out to some of the bars at night, staying out late. But we got up every morning, the next morning, to come to work and do it all over again. And it almost became kind of like a self-inflicted contest for us to see how long we could keep this going. But we were seeing a lot of live music at that time and having a lot of fun. And we were working hard.
Through a relationship with the tree business, somebody who worked here, I was able to meet my wife of 25 years. Had I not worked here, we traveled in different circles, we're living in different towns, and most likely I would have never met her. So it's another big benefit of being an employee of the tree business. So thank you.
Yeah. First time I seen this place, my jaw dropped to crap. And I knew they were doing it. We all knew that when we were parking at the other spot, but nobody had come by. And the first time I seen it, we weren't even here. It was just, well, yeah, the building's up. You want to take a look? And I drove in and seen it, and I'm like, oh, mackerel. And nothing was. It's just a building, just a shell, And I was like, oh, wow. But yeah, no. I knew we would get bigger, but I didn't ever foresee this. This was hard to see this coming.
I wouldn't say that I did or I didn't. This certainly has not surprised me. When you're 16, 17 years old, you're not really thinking like, what, okay, what is this going to look like? 30, 40, 50 years from now. But as you get older, you start to think about that. And then as I got older, I was also, I kind of stepped out of the business then. I was in my early 20s when I kind of stopped working for the company, more or less. But obviously I still followed how things were going for them along the way, and still they're my family. So we, I talk to them about it all the time. Still hang out with all of them, Mark and Steven, and it's not been a surprise to me whatsoever, because they're all cut from the same cloth, and they're all thinking about, okay, where do we want to go from here? What can we do next? There was a couple of leaps of faith that I think that they took along the way, including buying this piece of property and putting up this building and you know, that were like, wow moments.
The plan and the groundwork was set in the 80s for what you see today. Definitely, you know, there was always talk of it, and it may have taken longer than they wanted, but they did it right, and they're growing, and they're still growing, and they should be proud of that.
They've come a long way, you know, and they've made it a better industry than it started out to be. And another amazing thing is to have Steve Jr. and Mark embrace the business. Well, that doesn't always happen in a family, especially a family, you know, a business like this. There's a lot of other things these two guys could be doing. They're both pretty darn smart. And they could, you know, have put that into different things, but they chose to go in this direction. And they just amazing how successful they are in their own right as well.
So did I ever think it would amount to this? How does it feel about 50 years? Believe it or not, I actually sort of did kind of think about that kind of thing. I was, I guess, one of those odd people that would be like, oh my gosh, my mom used to tell me I was 2 going on 30. So part of me still feels like I'm like 18 and like just back there, like how the heck am I here now? But at the same time, I could always kind of picture, you know, we're going to be bigger. This is going to be, I could kind of picture, you know, we got to get out of the house, Mom. We can't be in your house forever. We have an office. We got to do this. I can see more trucks, more companies having a satellite office. I can kind of see, I just could never really fully envision how do I get from here to here. So I guess I partially back then even kind of envisioned it was going to be bigger, it was going to be something, and we had something different. And how we were going to get there was always fuzzy and didn't always put 2 and 2 together. At this point, you know, I can still see bigger and I still see better and still not sure. Again, all those missing pieces to the puzzle. Some of them took way longer than I anticipated, and some of them went faster than I anticipated. So I guess that's the hard part, is always just the timing, and it never goes as fast as you want. But then at the same time, here I am and I'm saying, how is it 50 years already? How has this all gone by? I can't believe that was 20 or 30 years ago. And I can't believe I've been doing this for 40 years. And when you look back in hindsight, it went really quick, but you know, hours and days can drag on, but the years fly by. But I think everybody, as you get older, has that same experience, no matter if you're doing tree care or not. That's just how life is. Yeah, I guess I've had the vision. I've seen where it could go. I see where we can still go. I'm hopeful that some of those things will come to pass. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to the next 50 years. Don't know where it's going to go, but I think it'll still, as long as we can keep it fun with good people, the hard work will pay off, and it'll probably still be another wild ride, but looking forward to it.